Hi everyone, Evie here, the Greek Goddess of Great Reading. That was fast since my last review, right? It must mean that I really liked the book that I'm going to be reviewing today, Consent by Nancy Ohlin. Bee has a secret. Actually, she has more than one. There's her dream for the future that she can't tell anyone, not her father, and not even her best friend Plum. And now there's Dane Rossi. Dane is hot. He shares Bee's love of piano and he believes in her. He's also Bee's teacher. When their passion for music crosses into passion for each other, Bee finds herself falling completely for Dane. She's never felt so wanted, so understood, so known to her core. But the risk of discovery carries unexpected surprises that could shake Bee entirely. Bee must piece together what is and isn't true about Dane, herself, and the most intense relationship she's ever experienced. Oh, drama. This book was given to me by my boyfriend for my birthday, which was about 2 weeks ago, and I've already finished it, which is crazy, but I can do that when I really, really like a book. The topic of this book is very near to my core beliefs because it talks about consent, and not necessarily consent in the way that you might normally have heard of it, in that a girl needs to say yes to consent, or anybody, a girl or a man, needs to say yes to consent to sex or any sort of sexual or even intimate touching, like even kissing. But it refers to consent in the form of a underage person and a superior. Now, the law of consent where I live in Ontario, Canada, I'm pretty sure is 16, but there's some stipulations around it, like you can have sex if you're under 16 with somebody who is less than 5 years older than you, and it's very weird. But the stipulation in this book is that you can't have sex, you cannot legally consent to have sex if you are under the age of 18, even if somebody else your age consents to have sex. So if you're under the age of 18 and you're having sex in the state that B lives in, which I can't remember what it is right now, you're breaking the law. And so that's what's happening in this book. In case you can tell, B and her teacher, Mr. Rossi, or Dane, as he becomes called eventually, start to have a affair, a relationship, and it's really intense. She really likes him, and she doesn't believe when she hears these laws about consent that how could they send him to jail if she willingly wants to have a relationship with this man. I really liked how Nancy Ohlin presented this story, because even sometimes when you are completely willing to do something, it doesn't mean that it's right legally or maybe morally, because in this scenario, you can't legally also consent to have sex with someone who is in a position of authority over you. That's a law of consent, I think, universally in North America. And Mr. Rossi is someone who has authority over her. He's her teacher. He can grade her, and he can get her in trouble. And B doesn't really realize that. And it's great, she's falling in love and experiencing all these amazing things, and Mr. Rossi is making her feel like she is talented and she is great at her music. But sometimes B is really reckless, and that really demonstrated just how young and naive she was. She would go over to his house for practice lessons, and while Mr. Rossi was not going to hurt her, as we know as readers, in a normal situation, you might not do that. You might not go to your teacher's house to do anything outside of school, because that's just, you wouldn't do that, especially if somebody is older than you. Going to an older man's house that you don't know very well by yourself and not telling anybody about it, because her relationship with him, even before anything sort of more intimate occurred, was very secretive. She didn't even want to really tell her best friend about it. So that really demonstrated just how young she was, that she didn't realize the dangers of some of the actions that she was taking. She also has some sort of daddy issues, which we find out early on in the book, that her father doesn't really come home a lot. He's always working. He gets upset with her anytime there's a brief mention or sort of similarity between her and her deceased mother. And so we realize that maybe her relationship and attraction to Mr. Rossi has something to do with the fact that she has not gotten any male attention from her own father or her older brother because of the fact that they blame her in her head for her mother's death. So she thinks she's falling in love with him, but in reality I think she just wanted that sort of approval and that validation that she was a talented, beautiful, smart, nice girl that was wanted, and she never got that from her father. Some people might read this book and think Mr. Rossi is this really cute, really sexy sort of Kit Harington, as they describe him in the book, if you don't know, is Jon Snow from the Game of Thrones series, who is very attractive. But I couldn't seem to picture him in my head as a sexy, nice, smooth guy. He was just the bad guy in my head because he knew that you can't do this. It's not right. And there are reasons for why it's against the law. And yet he still did it. And yes, B should have also realized it, but he is the older person, the more experienced person, and I just think he was preying on the fact that she was so vulnerable. And I didn't approve of the relationship. I didn't like the relationship at all throughout this book. But even though I didn't like him, I did love this book. I loved what it portrayed and what it showed readers about consent. So if you guys haven't picked up Consent by Nancy Ohlin, I highly suggest you do. The next book I'll be reading is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I tried to start it earlier in the year and then I stopped, and now I'm going back to it, so I will be reading this one next. So if you guys want to follow along, read The Road by Cormac McCarthy. As usual, my Twitter and website and Instagram are linked in the bio below. Hit subscribe if you guys want to see more videos by me. I'm Evie, the Greek goddess of great reading, and until next time guys, keep reading.